Hello everyone, my name is Konrad Rogoz. Welcome to Truth and Law. Today's presentation is adopting the warrior mindset and implementing it in everyday life. Something along those lines. We'll see what the title is when I conclude. But I'm very excited about this one. I don't have as many notes as I usually do because this is a topic that's very personal to me. And it's very close to me. This is kind of the story of my life. So let's get into it this way. There's a lot of stuff about self-help. A lot of people are listening to motivational speakers. I get the sense that of things about like diet, exercise, all the different diets, the different workout regimens, and that combined with just philosophical and ideological changes. People are trying to do better. They get the sense that the normal way of life in 2022 is not fulfilling enough, and this is certainly what I used to think like long ago. But I think there's an X factor, like a killer instinct missing in this like self-improvement lifestyle, this self-improvement trend. And this is why I wanted to talk about the warrior mindset and really explain why I think that is very important. And this is like the key to unlocking those things that self-help, diet, exercise, motivation, lifestyle changes are all getting at. But to get to that, I wanted to talk about the problems we have as people. And before I get to that, the thing about self-help and everything, motivation, I feel like it could get circular because there's no set purpose. There's no goal. And if everything is just about living in more bliss, making yourself better and better, of course this is good, but there has to be a higher purpose outside of yourself. Otherwise, I see that as being circular, and it cannot be fruitful. And the higher purpose that I stand for in life is truth. And I know that could sound like that's kind of like ambiguous, or it's a very abstract concept, but it isn't. Truth is the purpose, which is just awareness of reality. And towards the end of this presentation, I'll talk about truth and define that in a better way. But let's jump to the problem. The problems I see in life, there are a lot of them in society, personal, societal. But I wanted to go to the big one, which is fear. Fear I see now. I have a lot less fear than I used to have, and now I see fear in everybody. We all feel it, but it's so dominant and pervasive. It's really alarming to me. And the kind of fear I'm talking about is like inertia. This is the fear of, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. Fear of failure, fear of rejection. Of course, we all know these things, we all struggle with these things. But it consumes people so much. You open up social media, you see people living out these lives, these people living out these perfect lives. And now, in comparison to that, we feel like we're so unworthy. There's so much fear about, I'm not like this person. The person you see through the camera, you think you're not like them, but this is false because you have that within you. And you could see this is sounding like self-help, motivation, and I think those things are good. I like to see that. I think empowerment is needed in where we're trying to go, which again is truth and freedom. The key thing here is freedom. This is what I stand for, is why I created this channel. But fear is going to stop that every time. Fear is going to block it, destroy it. And what goes along with that is lack of courage. This is the huge thing, and it's not the same thing as it's not the same thing as fear. Lack of courage is that you feel the fear, but you won't overcome it. Now, I could feel fear all the time, You feel fear before you turn the camera on and start speaking in front of people. This is normal, With the pandemic, a lot of people, they fear going outside, and not to get on those people, not to get on anybody that's experiencing fear. But take it back to the warrior mindset. It's what you do when you're confronted with the fear. So lack of courage is a huge thing. This is I could call it the biggest problem in the world, and I could you can't really even you can't really prove that wrong. When it comes down to it, you could go to all the things that are wrong with society, all the evil, all the injustice that's going on, and say if we had courage, everybody had more courage, we could solve those things. And the third thing is comfort. And comfort sounds good, but this is like the attachment to comfort, and this is the big problem. This is why the warrior mindset is needed, because people are so comfortable with their way of life, they don't want to step outside any boundaries. They're afraid that the things they've gotten so dependent on and addicted to are going to go away now, and there are now problems that they haven't had before. These are not real problems, but you like a TV show, or me, not that long ago, I'm watching wrestling and hockey every day. You do that a couple days in a row, and now if you weren't to do it, that attachment to comfort is going to make you act differently. You're now attached to something that was a desire has become now a necessity. Very dangerous things. And I'll take that to the solution, which is one of them is the warrior mindset. There are like a couple different paths to get over these problems: fear, lack of courage, and comfort. But this one, the warrior mindset, I think is very necessary. I think a lot of people need this. They instinctively want it, but it's just not there. And I'll talk about why it's not there too. But let me sum that up by saying fear, lack of courage, and comfort, this is like rejection of truth. And it's basically like denial. It's, again, this circular reasoning. It's okay, I don't have to do this. Look at what could happen if I do this. I'd rather just stay in my little shell and just do what I do. And rejection of truth. Let me take that to the solution. The warrior path, if I could sum it up, it would be just taking things a little bit more seriously in everyday life. Like me, I do construction. Pretty basic stuff, nothing crazy. And yet, in that line of work, you can implement the warrior mindset, and really, especially in that. Your daily life, the problems you're confronted with, you could really get into that mindset, get into that lifestyle of training, getting better, and viewing your obstacles as like an enemy on the battlefield. And I think just about everybody can do this. And if you don't think that's possible in your everyday life to implement that, then I think you should reconsider your life, because life is serious, Even if you're sitting at a desk doing this and that, it's serious enough that you should take pride in what you're doing. So how do we do this? Well, number one is mental toughness. I love that one. But mental toughness is kind of like a general thing. What constitutes somebody being mentally tough? So the first thing is diligence. Diligence as in you gotta be hard on yourself. You gotta stay sharp and remind yourself not to take the easy way out in the things you do. Diligence is like discipline. You stay on yourself, like martial arts. Say there's a coach. The coach is always pushing you. Go harder. He's not letting you daydream and slip out. And you need to be that coach for yourself, because nobody's really going to do it for you. If you got family, loved ones that are going to push you, that's a blessing. But I don't think we push each other enough. And another aspect of mental toughness to me is calm. You gotta really stay calm and not let your emotions take over, because that's going to take you out of the warrior mindset. That's going to take you into like a defensive shell, and then the fear, the comfort is going to come into play. About calm, one quote that I love is from Rickson Gracie. He's a jiu-jitsu legend specialist. Check him out. But he used this quote. He said, "Find your comfortable place in hell." And I love that one, you know. When you're faced with adversity and suffering, you have to just accept it, because if you just focus on it, you hone in on that, it's going to consume you. So you're in this, you're like in a burning flame, but thankfully, you know, not literally. You have to remind yourself, I can take this. Settle down, you stay calm. You've already been diligent to stay hard on yourself, but when it gets to be that super big obstacle, you just calm down and it'll pass. That's another aspect of calm. All things will pass. It's not forever. So mental toughness, that's a big one. The second one, what I said in the intro, purpose. That's a part of mental toughness. You can't really just do things just to do them. Everything has to have overarching purpose that brings everything together. And how you could do this is force yourself to habitually verify and reaffirm what your mission is. You got to find the mission. Everybody has it. Or even as you're developing it, you got to be repetitive. Repetition is key. Stay on yourself. Why am I doing this? Like me, I'm working, I got my hammer, I got my drill, I'm working with inanimate objects. It seems like there is no higher overarching purpose, but there is. You're building something. And regardless of what you're building, it's not even about that. It's about building yourself. It's about perfecting yourself to be a better person, because all of us contain a spirit. So it's a lot more serious than flesh and bones. There's a spirit there that was here before this material world. So you're a steward, a host of that, and you cannot let that just sit there and equate it with the physical basic world, because it's more than that. Our goals need to be refreshed by our thoughts and intentions. So that goes back to purpose. You have to remind yourself, what am I really trying to do? And remind yourself, I am trying to do something. You know, you got to stay on yourself. Do things to the best of your ability. And bouncing off of that is being present in the moment. And now that I think back on it, I should have made this first. Being present in the moment is what it's all about. Approaching mundane tasks as an opportunity to improve. That's basically what made me do this presentation. You're doing these mundane tasks, and you could just go through the motions, get your check, get your 9 to 5 or whatever, and then you go and live your life. But is it really worth doing that? If something is worth doing, it's worth not only doing right, but shouldn't it be worth taking it even further and using it to your advantage? So if you have to do mundane tasks, you're treating this like training, like an opportunity to improve and perfect yourself. But easier said than done. You got to reject all these impulses. As you're doing these mundane things, over time you're gonna get pulled here. Your vision's gonna be pulled here. You know, even doing a presentation like this, you're getting the impulse to go here. Think about this, daydream. Think about how warm it is. Think about the camera, the lights. You know. So you got these impulses to daydream and basically go through the motions, which is like your brain's way of bringing out fatigue. So when your mind, just like your body, gets tired, but instead of it goes to sleep, like your body goes to sleep. So it's going to tell you to do this and that, and then you're basically just going through the motions. But if you're going through the motions, you're not being present in the moment. And lastly, in implementing how to become the warrior, this is what the couple of minutes have been about, is develop the philosophical hunger. I call it the philosophical hunger, which is kind of like the mindset of do more, pushing yourself to do more. And more accurately, it's the hunger for truth. So overcome the defensive instinct to defend our failures. What I mean by that is, when something doesn't go right, the first thing we do is defend. We lash out, try to defend what we did. But you know, you have mental toughness, purpose, being present in the moment. When you have that, you can chill out and think about, do I really need to defend a wrong position? There's no point in defending a wrong position. So when things don't go our way, when we're wrong, we gotta have that hunger within us to be right. So you gotta, sometimes you gotta accept and say, oh, sorry, I was wrong, even if you think you're right, because that's going to elevate you, not only in the eyes of that person that you're confronting, but in the eyes of the truth, which is omnipresent. The truth is everywhere. So if you've got obstacles, if you've got adversity, you step back, you say, okay, I need to do better. That's the philosophical hunger. And why I say philosophical is it's about the ideas. It's not about just results, things that take place in the world. It's about ideals. It's about form. It's about the word. And that's the philosophical hunger. And we fight back because the truth is belligerent, meaning it's confrontative. You know, truth is when you're faced with it, you want to fight back because it's in your face. It's right there. It's not good to hear, and it's personal. But we should resist the urge to fight back against the truth. Now, the warrior mindset is all about, fighting. It's about confrontation, but not against truth. The truth, you have to be like water. Like that's another martial arts little saying. Be like water, Bruce Lee, and that all ties in. As funny as it may sound. The truth is perfection, and we will always fall short, but we should chase it anyway. And that's the beginning. That's the philosophical hunger. That's the beginning to the warrior's path. And taking that solution further, let's talk about the philosophical journey, is what I have called it. And that goes beyond, you've done the mental toughness, you've got the calm, the diligence, being present in the moment. That's how it influences your body. That's how the warrior's path changes your body, your internal decisions and behavior. But let's talk about the mind and the results of the ideas that you hold. So the philosophical journey is coming into a knowledge of truth and natural law. And the warrior is inseparable from the philosopher. This is a key idea that I want to get across in this presentation. You could reference the samurais, the Bushido code, and a lot of other traditions where the warrior, not the soldier, but the warrior, he was a very honorable person. And I definitely think this is true. People that are associated with war today may not be associated with that, but they're not true warriors. So what is this journey? You start out being helpless, like a child, defenseless. And through diligent hard work, like the warrior does, he tries harder and harder to develop his skills, master his craft. He gains the knowledge and begins to come out of the darkness. This is like the initiation. And every day he is humbled. And you know about this if you ever tried to exercise. You're going to push yourself to exhaustion. And then you're confronted by your own weakness and fragility. And humility is the key of that dynamic. You know this if you've done something. You realize how hard it is. You're pushed to the limit and you give up. But as you develop, it takes more and more to make you give up. And you become more aware of life and nature and more grateful and appreciative of it. This is why a lot of martial arts guys, if you watch in the UFC, you're seeing like this great, noble humility. And if you watch people do high-level martial arts, oftentimes you'll see that. Other times they got their own problems. There's a lot of ego. Sure, you put millions of dollars and lights on somebody, you're going to see the ego come out. But I want to focus on this, becoming more aware of life and nature. You're going to become more appreciative of those universal rules, those universal concepts of triumph after struggle. And as he approaches mastery, the warrior in his path, he recognizes life's laws everywhere. and this is everywhere in nature. And you peel away the layers until only the truth remains. This is like the core. This is the goal of the journey, the finish line. And let me define that a little better. What is the philosophy of truth? What is the truth when I say truth? It's the objective truth, which is natural law. So natural law is the universal system that governs human morality. We're talking about morals. And this is the in existence, by default, unchanging system that governs morality. And this is not common knowledge, but it should be. Because you can only discover that. Nobody's going to invent natural law. But if you have discovered it, then you know it. And you know it's the truth. But the reason it isn't, and this isn't taught in classrooms, is because this is going to destroy a lot of our systems of control that we have become comfortable with and addicted to. This goes back to what I was talking about before, about comfort, lack of courage. It's going to really disturb our entire way of life and thinking if natural law were to be common knowledge. But that's my whole goal. That's my mission, is to make natural law common knowledge, because then we will have freedom, and the reason we will have freedom is because we will have morality. And a knowledgeable people that conduct themselves in a dignified way, they can never be enslaved. This is the whole point. And natural law, what is it? What is it based on? First, the non-aggression principle, which is like the golden rule, treat others how you want to be treated. And that's the first part. And the second part, which people ignore, is the self-defense principle. So, yeah, this is why we need the warrior's mindset, because it's not just treat others as you want to be treated. It's when there is injustice, you gotta fight back. This is the key thing. And everything has knocked the warrior out of our inner collective consciousness. Religion has knocked it out. Money has knocked it out. Everybody is so fearful of conflict. And on the other hand, like, everybody is getting into conflict. So many loose screws, people that are ready to snap over little things, road rage. A whole lot of people are just ready to go off at a moment's notice. But when it comes to defending your rights, your natural rights, they don't want conflict then. And this is not natural. Martial arts is morality. The code of conduct that, you could reference the samurais, different Eastern traditions of martial arts. But this has been lost, but when it comes down to it, real martial arts, like the real warrior lifestyle, is deeply connected to morality. It would be nice if we had a martial art that teaches that outwardly. Taekwondo has a bit of that, but not so black and white blatant as I want to make it in this presentation. But I know that the warrior mindset, it's not such a popular concept because we're so opposed to war, and war is terrible. But that doesn't mean the warrior's mindset doesn't apply in peacetime. It applies even more in peacetime. Many people oppose the warrior concept because they're pacifists. True. But the warrior rarely kills. The warrior trains. Most of the time, he spends his every waking moment is just about training. So this is not about killing or fighting. The warrior's lifestyle is about self-improvement. This is the self-improvement lifestyle. It's working hard to learn skills, to obtain high control of your faculties, sharpen your senses. This is what the warrior does. And maximize awareness of the tools you wield, the weapons you have. And I'm not talking about like a sword or a gun. This is awareness of your mind, your tongue, your heart. These are tools that you have that will influence the people around you. And if you're aware of those things, what they can do with what they can build as well as what they can destroy. And this is why morality is key, because you're talking about life and death. You're talking about building and destroying. And you need to know natural law if you're going to have these tools, and we all have these tools. That's why it's all the more scary that people do not know natural law. And as you can see, all the suffering in the world, all the wickedness and injustice, you know, it's clear that there's a problem. Maintaining the body, mind, and spirit. So these are all of the tools. So that external factors are less likely to influence you. This is like external pressures, how hot it is, how humid it is, the illnesses that may infect your body. Internal factors, it's even more important. Tiredness, laziness, internal factors with like fear. All of these things, if you maintain the body, mind, and the spirit, that's what the warrior does, and you're becoming now less dependent, less likely to be a slave to those factors. And just like the mind, body, and spirit seek stillness, the warrior seeks peace. The warrior doesn't seek war. War is supposed to be a last resort. But, you know, it may need to become a reality. So let's talk about war. Let's talk about what people think when they think about a warrior. First of all, people do not understand that we are in a time of war regardless. Right now, we are in a time of war. And a little anecdote about kind of what was happening as this presentation was, the idea for it was taking place. I was driving by and I see like a Ukraine, support of Ukraine sign, and it had the Ukrainian flag and it said pray for peace. And I thought about it and I thought, can you pray for peace? Will that do anything? Praying for peace, does that make sense? And you cannot pray for peace. You have to fight for it. This is kind of like a paradox, but it's absolutely true. When there is injustice in the world, there are things that are wrong, like invading another country. These things are happening, they're wrong, they have no justification. But when that happens, I would pray for that to stop. I would pray for it to not happen in the first place. But when it happens, you do not pray it away. You have to fight. And in our life, we are born into chaos. That's why I'm here on YouTube and I'm making websites, because that is the way to fight back. That's how I'm fighting against war and invasion and encroachment, and I think that everyone watching this should fight too, and this is the way to do it. This is the way to fight so that we do not have to pick up guns. And what is the war? What is the invasion I'm talking about? It's the advance of totalitarianism. People do not, this is not for people who think there is no advance of totalitarianism, because I guess they won't notice until it's too late. But for those who can sense that there is something happening, there's an advance, whether you call it the deep state, people call it, you refer to them as globalists, or you're just, if you're on the other side and you're just seeing that the world is deteriorating in a non-compassionate and selfish way, you might be seeing it too. You might call it communism, whatever. But the point is, societal institutions have been overrun. The enemy has completely ran through them. So what do I mean by that? Societal institutions, things that people used to trust in, and they still trust in, but they shouldn't. Religion, that has been overrun. You could make the case that religion was never on our side, but at the same time, I'm from Poland. I get anecdotes. People are telling me from my family, no, the church, during the time where we did have war and we had really hard communism, hard slavery, the church was a place where the revolutionaries went. So I have to now respect the church and just the institutions of religion, because it could be used as a place to discuss freedom and a place to discuss morality. But as far as the society, the institution as a whole, Religion is gone. Medicine, gone. Very poisonous, as the pandemic has shown. And you could go the money route, you could talk about big pharma and everything. You could go that way, or you could go really to the history of medicine and how they have roots in these like diabolical procedures, the insanity of thinking that you are God and you're going to do this surgery, you're going to inject this into somebody. That's the institution of medicine. Now, I'm not talking about health, I'm talking about medicine, medical doctors. That institution is gone. Anything relating to banking and finance is gone. Government, gone. I know this country is, well, it was founded on no government. So, self-governance. It's about sovereignty. But the history of America, limited government. Government that could be good, that's gone now. Because now you have government that's approaching totalitarianism. Definitely authoritarian. And a few other institutions is not the point. But the point is, if those institutions were like a tower that's guarding against the enemy advancing, the towers are empty, the towers are burning, and there's nothing stopping that enemy, that totalitarian enemy that's going to take over those institutions and use them against us. These are like the forts and castles that have been taken over, and they used to be lines of defense. They're now keeping us enslaved. The enemy has surrounded us, and I hear a lot of this about where there's an awakening happening. People are fed up, people are this, and we're making progress. A lot of people see the recent Supreme Court decisions as victories, but for every one step back, they take 2 steps forward. And we see the 1 step back that they take and say, oh, we're winning, we've got them on the run. The people are taking over. No, they are advancing, and the advance only slows. They never really take a step back. They take a slower step, and we incorrectly perceive that to be a success on our end. Most people will not recognize slavery until it becomes overt, like it was from the 1950s all the way to 1980, and really it never even ended in Poland. But that's my history. I'm glad I'm in this nation because it's not going to go as it did in Europe. But when slavery does become overt, then people are going to notice. Why? Because right now denial is going to preserve that comfort. They don't want to really accept that their TV show or their favorite sport is not going to be the most important thing in their life. So it is not in their interest to accept truth that, maybe they need to be over there speaking up and fighting the enemy. But when their comfortable life is destroyed, and that moment will happen if we don't turn it around, that's going to be gone anyway. So then they'll look outside and see, actual bloodshed, death and destruction, family members disappearing, sickness, illness, and death. And then they'll accept it because it'll become, you have to accept it. You can only deny things for so long. And the reason people don't recognize the threat coming is because having to change their way of life, having to actually put effort in to change fundamentally the behaviors that are hardwired in your brain, the threat of that is even bigger than the threat of slavery. People, they're getting used to the way they are, paying taxes, whatever, increasing regulations, increasing disappearance of their privacy. Okay, that's uncomfortable, but changing your way of life, changing your habits, your addictions, that's even a bigger threat. So what does the warrior do? The warrior meets the enemy halfway on the battlefield. And this is the important thing in times of war. It's the willingness to sacrifice. The warrior has things he likes to do too. I like watching sports and, MMA. I like watching a TV show or wrestling, having interactions with family members. I don't have enough time to do all these things, but you got to be willing to sacrifice. Because if it's going to go away anyway, we're going to find ourselves in that position and say, man, we should have done something. And that goes along with caring about the future generations. And that's what I see as real care, real love, is loving the life that has not even been born yet. But we got to preserve their future and fulfill our moral obligation, you know, to do the right thing and make sure there is a future worth living. Because only a free life is worth living. One second. Okay, so that's in times of war. What are the weapons we have? Or I'll put it this way. What can help us in this time? And I'm not talking about armed rebellion, because this presentation is not even about that. There's no point in talking about that. What do we have at our disposal? And I call this the lost emotion or the forgotten emotion, and it's anger. Anger is seen as something that is negative and really has no place. And I disagree with that, and it's just, objectively, it's just not true. But there is such a thing as anger that is just consumes you, and it cannot bear any good fruit. Our society looks down on anger, to a degree, rightfully, but there are two different types of anger. And this is one of the important things I want to get across in this presentation. When we think about anger, we're thinking about what I call weak anger. Weak as in, well, I don't have a better way to describe it, but here's why it's weak. It's like childlike anger, and it's a defensive reaction to being hurt or offended. So here's an example, like for me in my line of work. You're doing something, you're trying hard, and then you got somebody telling you, oh, you're doing this wrong. And immediately you're feeling like hurt and offended because you think you're trying your best. This is what your emotional response is telling you. And you're getting angry because of that, because you feel like there's an injustice being done. And what happens then? It's like a Molotov cocktail. It's like explosive. You blow up on somebody. You might call them whatever. You might call your boss whatever. But what it really is a temper tantrum. This is like a child reaction. He has this big blow up. This is your response to what you perceive as an injustice of somebody saying basically that you're worthless. They're not literally saying that, but that's what it feels like at the time. That's what we translate it as. And after you have the tantrum, you regret it shortly after. This always happens. And you could see this in children the most. They'll blow up, throw things, and then a couple seconds later they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know why I did that. We have never grown out of these behaviors, and this weak anger is still present in adults. People live their whole lives in this way that they're so ready to respond in that weak way. And one characteristic of weak anger as opposed to strong anger, what I'm going to call positive anger, I'll talk about that soon, but one characteristic of weak anger is that it drains the energy of the host. So if you're carrying this, it's like a steam train, like a high octane engine. This is a 12-cylinder engine. If you want to be angry for a while, you might actually get sick. You're definitely going to be tired. It's like an explosion. That's why you could use the metaphor of fire for this. This kind of fire, like a Molotov cocktail, is an explosion, but it's going to need so much fuel to stay lit. It's like a spirit being channeled. It's akin to that. When people say possessed, you're possessed, that could be more accurate than they think. This is what weak anger is like. And it's immediately reactionary. Weak anger is reactionary. It's what we feel when something is done to us and our ego is attacked. But strong anger, as opposed to weak anger, what is that? It's righteous indignation. Strong anger is way different. The anger I'm talking about and what the warriors should feel and what I feel more and more as this world, it's not as the world is changing, it's as my eyes are opening to what is going on in the world. It's being angered by injustice. Like everybody could feel this. If you see a child being abused or an animal being abused, that's what you're feeling. And it's not an explosion like a Molotov cocktail that you're going to get over it. It's simmering. Like, this is a flame under the surface, and the temperature is going up and up until it blows up. And I call it a slow burn. But when it overheats, it's like a wildfire. And it's not going to go away as quick as the weak anger is. And this is why strong anger, this needs to be our weapon as warriors. Not to cause destruction, but we may have to destroy things and systems that are causing injustice, because that's our moral obligation. That's accordance with natural law. So yes, we have to obey the non-aggression principle, but if we are obeying the non-aggression principle and injustice and evil is still happening, then we have to use collectively the self-defense principle. So strong anger, it could be felt, used, and set aside by the person carrying it. So you're not consumed by this. It doesn't really take you over like weak anger. And strong anger, you could feel it, but you could still function. It's not going to make you act wild. And this is why the warrior mindset is needed, because we need to know the difference. We need to get comfortable with anger, and we need to be able to control it. So that's the lost emotion. And what I want to conclude this presentation with is what's even more powerful, and that's the lost word, the forgotten word. And anger, the forgotten emotion, is more used in war, in the time where defense is going to be necessary, in confrontation and conflict. But in peacetime, everyday life, adopting the warrior's mindset in everyday life, if I could tell you what the most important thing is, to adopt the forgotten word. And the forgotten word is no. Anger could be a profound tool, but it pales in comparison to this. The word no. You could talk about it for so long. How would I sum it up? This is what you say to the advance of totalitarianism, the injustice about to happen. When injustice is about to happen in your life, you have to use the forgotten word. And this is so important, because it's the response to encroaching evil. Once it takes hold in your life, you're part of it now. You're next to it. And say injustice is going on in this room, violence and abuse is going down in the room with me. If I don't say no, I am now taking on the moral implications, the moral karma or consequences that are going to be felt by the people carrying out the evil. So if we're among them, right, we're on this earth with them, we have to say no, and we have to say it loud. No is the resistance to immorality. Immorality meaning what's against natural law, what's against the non-aggression principle. Most people live in everyday resistance to truth. They're fighting the truth, And the warrior doesn't fight against truth. He lives in a flow state with the current of truth. Truth is a current. It's going to make you feel upset. It's going to make you want to push back. It's not going to feel good, like harsh criticism doesn't, like tough love doesn't, like rejection doesn't. But rejection could still be truth. That's not a negative thing that we need to run away from. Sometimes rejection is good for us. It's going to tell us how we need to change. The warrior lives in this flow state. He goes with the ups and he goes with the downs of truth. But most people are just every day resisting it, either resisting it or in denial of truth, because the truth hurts and it's belligerent. But when necessary, the warrior utters the forgotten word. No. We have to get used to saying this. No. All these things they want us to do, new mandates, new arbitrary laws, and executive little orders. We cannot be order followers. We have to use the word no. And this is how we make peace happen in the world. If anger leads to war, the lost word no leads to peace, because you have somebody now that their actions are going to make injustice happen. If you say no, you are now forcing them to, you're forcing them basically to put their money where their mouth is, to show which side they're on. And if they take part in that injustice, in that violence, and you've said no, then you have stood with righteousness, and now you're standing for peace. And they're over there starting war, and now you can engage in the self-defense principle, which we need to be in accordance with natural law. What is the forgotten word? It's unstoppable, immovable resistance. Just like natural law is immovable, the laws of physics, the laws of gravity, the laws of cause and effect, you're not going to change that. And when something is now telling you that those laws don't apply, it's trying to twist it, we need to become like a mountain, and we do not move. We say the word no, and that's it. No compromise. Anger leads to war, then the word no leads to peace. I mentioned this. It forces the wrongdoer to commit. That's a much better way to say it. It forces the wrongdoer to commit to their position of wrongness. And finally, no states the claim of human dignity. That's what we need to do. Beautifully said. So concluding this presentation, I have my website, truthandlaw.com. I'm going to link that, and thefreedomcurrent.com is a news publication that I started, where I'm going to talk about current events. As far as my next presentation, I'm not sure about that. I'll see where it goes. But I'm really happy I got to talk about this. The warrior's mindset in everyday life. Oh, the warrior, we associate, this is mostly directed towards men. That doesn't mean that women cannot be warriors. I know women that are, you know. Most likely, your mom is a warrior. So it doesn't just apply to men, but we need men to take this path, because we need to take this path. The warrior path is the strong protecting the weak, and you hear this all the time: is where are the real men? What is happening to manhood? And people wrongly get on. They get on people. They get on people that are living alternative lifestyles, and they're blaming them. They're blaming women. They're blaming LGBT people for blurring the lines and weakening manhood. And this is my personal belief, I don't think that's the right way to go about it. I think we as normal men are failing. Huge failure. Not everybody has to take the warrior path. Not everybody is inclined to see life so strongly, so confrontatively, you know, so belligerently, like. But some of us, we see what's going on, we feel the strong anger, and we want to fight. For those people, I think you should put a camera in front of your face and say the word no, and say it publicly. Say it with your first name, last name. So, thank you for listening to me. My name is Konrad Rogoz. I stand for Truth and Law, and thank you very much for your time.